Today, I'm with Richard Price, CEO of Sydney Sports Management Group, otherwise known as SSMG. SSMG manage a variety of leisure and recreation centres in New South Wales, predominantly tennis, but have gyms and also manage aquatic centres, around 12 facilities, I'm led to believe. Richard's been in the role for about 3 years, but in the industry for about 20 years. So showing your age there, Richard.
But grey hairs.
You have got a few grey hairs. But before SSMG, Richard was the head of commercial and operations recreation division for YMCA New South Wales. And they had an annual delivery budget of around 45 million. So yeah, bit of a can to carry there, Richard. But I think that incorporated around 33 facilities, which and you were with the Y for I think 8 years. That's where I think I first met you, when I was managing the contracts on behalf of council. So
correct.
That's right. But previous to that, Richard, you've had stints in both a couple of leisure providers such as Bluefit and LeisureCo, and before that, Next Generation. And in England and Ireland, you worked for David Lloyd Leisure quite a few years ago. So lots of experience there. So I'm really pleased to welcome Richard. How are you going, Richard?
Yeah, good, David. Thanks for getting me on board, and it should be interesting. An Englishman and an Irishman talking about systems, wellness, and health in Australia.
Yeah, we just need the Scotsman, don't we? So we'll jump straight into it, mate. And just to check in with you first of all, in terms of your well-being. But what does well-being mean to you?
Yeah, I think well-being's about balance for me, and balancing the professional and the personal, and that's certainly challenging in my role. And previously you mentioned the YMCA there that I worked for.
Yeah.
And the YMCA had a mantra of body, mind, and spirit, and to this day I still really value that mantra. And obviously the body, keeping healthy, exercise. The mind, be it reading or just also switching off from technology. And then spirit, I somehow have a faith, so that's important to me as well. So just trying to get that balance right, Dave, on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, fantastic. And in terms of your well-being then, you've mentioned a couple of areas there. Can you give us some practical things that you do to keep yourself? Yeah,
certainly. And certainly over the course of the last 6 months with COVID, it's been an incredibly stressful time for anybody in the recreation, leisure, fitness, sports industry, and all industries, in fact.
Yeah.
And I think when you're leading through COVID, and that's certainly been a challenge and really hard on the staff and also our stakeholders. So I've actually doubled down on my sort of mindfulness and exercise through the period.
Yeah.
Some examples are, playing tennis now twice a week. I wasn't playing that much tennis previously with COVID, and that's about connecting with more friends who are going through some tough times with restructures and redundancies, and we just have a hit. The tennis isn't great, but the connection's important. So for me, I think one of the challenges we have is technology, and just taking a detox from that. So unfortunately, I do some sailing. Also get out on the road bike, as and get away from technology in that sense. And read a book many years ago, Arianna Huffington, called Thrive. She founded Huffington Post. Amazing woman, and just take all technology out of the bedroom. Simple thing, but sometimes hard to do. So that technology detox. 9 o'clock at night, I try to switch off from the technology, and also connecting with friends and family. It's sometimes challenging when you're on the other side of the world.
Yeah.
So when I'm in the car, that's just a time to maybe call into Ireland if I'm going home from work at night time, and just connect with those friends and just switch off a little bit from the daily grind. So a couple of things there. Also, the challenge I have in more senior roles is, in this industry, as you would know, it's be 6 a.m. till 10 at night, and it's Good Friday and Christmas Day. Leisure, recreation, community assets close.
Yeah.
So it's very hard to get the balance, and I almost look at it as an integration piece where I might be working late at night on something, or on the weekend, but then, just breaking up the day. So started playing paddle, which is a form of tennis and squash, on a Friday morning, and just to break up the day and the week with, a bit of networking involved in that as well. That's just the industry we're in. So.
Fantastic. And I think the example really poignant around the Huffington Post. So from memory, I think it got to the stage where she had a breakdown, and then that was the point where, she knew she needed to change. So hopefully, people don't need to get to that point, or yourself, to then make that change. But the other thing that I loved what you said there is that connection and playing tennis, if it was a Friday morning or whatever it is, because I think we live in such a, things are changing so quickly, and it's more like life integration, work life integration. And you don't have to wait for the weekend to play tennis or whatever. And if you can get that balance, I think that's really cool. So well done.
And that's the upside of our industry, where it is a 7-day-a-week industry. We can integrate sports and leisure. I've been really fortunate. Like, business and sports are probably my two passions, and I got to marry them into a career. So quite lucky, and have the passion as well is important.
And when you talk about well-being, a lot of people think that what's important for that is purpose and growth. And it's like, if you are working those long hours, I think because you're passionate, but you found your purpose. And I think a lot of people in our industry have got that because they want to kind of give back. So, but it's, it's more, you have to tailor that with a bit of moderation as well. And trying to get that balance is, how you started the conversation around your well-being.
Yeah. We're all on a journey. No one's got it right or wrong. It's just, you just do the best you can on a daily basis.
Absolutely. So tell me a little bit more about SSMG and, where you see, the organisation in the health and wellness system.
Yeah. So SSMG's a personalised, somewhat innovative management company based out of Sydney.
Yeah.
And we operate with a number of LGAs, local government authorities, managing their community assets. And also we actually work with over 100 schools, running various sports programs, but primarily in the tennis space.
Yeah.
So I suppose if you look at the systems approach, we're part of the Sydney health wellness system, and working with those partners to open up their assets to the community and try and maximize them for local government primarily, and for the schools. So that's probably, and there's some commercial obviously outcomes for that as well. The next step in the SSMG journey is the philanthropic side, and starting to work on more access and inclusion, mental health programs, and broadening that area, because obviously we have a social responsibility, I believe, to do that. But I always say you got to earn the right to go wide first, like in footy. So you got to get your commercials right to allow you to do that. And we're now in a position where we're starting to chip away at that social inclusion space.
Yeah, fantastic. So it sounds like since you took on the role, you've been getting a lot of the processes, systems right, getting the house in order, and you've obviously from what I know, do a lot of great work within the community and just the schools, but that access and inclusion piece is just to try and deepen that a little bit more.
Yeah, and David, I think it's about partnership models as well. I don't believe we can do it all in SSMG. So who can we partner with? In the mental health space, if it's major entities like Black Dog, and then how can we run mental health programs with their support, or the community department within council? And for me, I think we just need more trust in the industry, and that's personal opinion. I'm actually working with a competitor at the moment, another management company, and we're working on some initiatives. So we might compete on a tender, but we're working on this side project. We just got to keep building that trust, I feel. I'm sure there'll be people out there that might necessarily agree with that approach.
Yeah, so you're definitely looking at it from that whole of systems approach, and you're not working in a silo. It's about collaboration, and at the end of the day, we're all trying to do trying to get more people more active more often, and I think that's a really good way to go.
And a really interesting, sorry David to cut across you, had a conversation with the mayor of a council today, and we're talking about gaming, and for me, esports You know, it's growing at, I think, 15% a year. And some people see it as, this sedentary challenge in society. And yes, it is that. But how do we integrate that? The example I have is a 10-and-a-half-year-old son, which is, the most important thing in my life. And he'll play as FIFA soccer.
Yeah.
But then he'll get outside and try and replicate the players with a real ball. So I think we've got to work on, again, systems approach. How do we almost integrate esports into our, leisure, recreation, hard asset businesses? Again, that's my view in the world, because I don't think we can rage against that machine. I think it's now part of our society.
Yeah, I think it's if you stand still, it's you die really. It's about being innovative and going with the times, isn't it? And I think from particularly Asia as well, in terms of esports, and America, it's massive. They sell out stadiums, don't they, for this stuff? It's incredible. Yeah,
I did an example of that. They sold out the Ace Arena in Sydney, like 20,000, but 1 million signed up online and paid a fee to watch people game. And I know that's very challenging for people to go, my son watching people game. It's amazing.
Yeah.
But if you've got 1 million people doing it, so how can you leverage that for, good, and get them also outside exercising or in a leisure centre exercising? Because yes, we have this obesity epidemic in Australia, in childhood obesity, and gaming is part of that challenge and issue.
I think it's that sedentary kind of behavior, isn't it? Is the thing with the gaming. I mean, you sat down. If there's other things, you can roll into it where people are moving, and augmentation, which is something that's coming out, more and more now, and incorporate that into physical activity. I think, there's a lot of good things to come out of that. And you were just talking about obesity in children, and you talked about mental health before, Richard. So, as you know, 1 in 2 Australians has got a chronic condition. So if you could nudge part of the system to improve, the well-being of Australians, what would that look like?
Such a challenging question and challenging issue for government. For me, it's probably 2 or 3 items. My view is a lot of children model their parents' behavior. So if parents are exercising, eating well, there's going to be a byproduct benefit to the child. But now we're in a generational vacuum where parents don't know how to prepare good meals, or they haven't been exercising. So this physical literacy piece, it's now unfortunately beholden to the schools, I think, to educate the children on physical literacy, nutrition, which is an unfair burden on the schools and the teachers who already have numerous tasks they have to complete. But I think that's the reality. So if you nudge the system, to your question, is how can we help our schools through funding or education or teacher development improve the physical literacy of the children? And then, because without being negative, I think it's almost, we've lost a generation. It's almost at that point. So do we have to double down at the school level? That's just one view. And then the other item is, which we contentious, is how big an issue is this fast food? And every town you go into, be it regional Australia or metro, there's McDonald's and Burger King signs everywhere. I personally like a quarter pounder, but everything in moderation. And the coffee at McDonald's is quite good, but do we get to a point of legislating around taxing this? We know McDonald's supports a lot of local clubs, and that's obviously a good strategy on their part, but the byproduct is kids are probably eating too much fast food.
The economics on taxing, actually, I've looked into a little bit, and it just seems a win-win. If you look at the tobacco industry and that coordinated approach, and how well we've done in reducing smoking, which was a systems approach, really, advocacy around, media campaigns, I think there's something in that, but it's to start to tax sugar, for example. Is it that the people from more disadvantaged areas would be the ones that would get hit the most? Because it's sometimes not easy or cheap to eat well, is it, these days?
I think that's that education piece into the disadvantaged community. And, I'm certainly not an expert in this area and far from it, but a family dinner at McDonald's, those family boxes, like $20, I think.
Yeah.
And they're, a lot of them are bought in, certainly challenging demographic areas. Because again, I think the parents have lost that ability to cook a meal, like, with fresh ingredients. And again, it's, people doing 2 and 3 jobs and cognizant of that and time per, and maybe have single moms, single dads in that system as well. But then if the parents aren't cooking a meal, I come back to the children. We gotta teach these kids what good nutrition is. It's a massive challenge for Western society, not just Australia.
And just to finish off this piece around nutrition, I think it's cloudy out there. What is a healthy diet? There's ketogenic diets, and there's low fat or plant food. So that's just a personal thing, but and I think it comes down to your body type and you as an individual. But it's I love your point there around education and the physical literacy stuff. I think that's that would definitely nudge the system in the right way, Richard. And back to tennis. So where do you see the role of tennis in the health and wellness system?
Yeah, I think SSMG and the facilities we operate around tennis, it's a cog in the wheel, I suppose. There's a lot of inputs that are required from sports governing bodies to management companies to LGAs running their own facilities. So I see tennis for me. What I love about the sport of tennis, and obviously I'm a bit biased, we have kids on the court at the age of 3 and 4. But we see 85, 90-year-olds hitting ball playing doubles. So look at the tennis centre, typical tennis centre we'd operate is, you have the retirees in the morning come in and their social groups and they connect with each other, might have a coffee after, and that's good social connection. And obviously they're exercising, which is really good. And then you might have some schools coming through during the day as well. So you're getting the schools active. And then you have your junior programs, mid-afternoon. And then you have your adult comps at night, or your cardio tennis, which is a sort of a fitness tennis program. Weekends you have competitions with Safari Association. So, and then in there you have some access and inclusion pieces, Special Olympics or wheelchair tennis. So, a tennis facility can really be a facility for all peoples, all shapes and sizes. It doesn't matter if you're hopeless at the game, you can have a hit with your mates, or if you're Rafa, the top player. It's a game for. I truly think it's a game for all. My best man at my wedding was from my tennis club, so I love that story because to this day I'm still friends with him. And when I came to Australia, I didn't know anybody, Dave, and I didn't have a job. Yeah. And I went into a tennis club, and I used to play with all the retired guys 2-3 days a week until I sourced a job. So for me, that was a really good connection point in a foreign country. So I think that's where the tennis can be a real vehicle for community, as can many other recreation assets.
Yeah, I hear you. That's it sounds like tennis has been something quite stable in your life, where it's supported you, it's brought you friendships and connections, and there's you talked about all the different groups there that you've got coming through SSMG. It's that whole breadth of different demographics there, and the only thing I would say in that though is, because I think, and I'm just being a little controversial, in terms of tennis, it can be seen sometimes as more of an upper class sport, maybe, or it's more, people from low socioeconomic areas, they might think, the local tennis clubs, it's like a Australian Open to me and you. How can we target some of those groups to engage them?
It's a good question, and I think it's a perception management piece. It's it's an elite game, and somewhat. I look at England and Ireland, where I've worked and where I'm from, and tennis clubs were primarily you needed to know someone on the committee. to get into a tennis club. And, there's a joining fee.
Yeah.
So that's very much the Anglo way. In mainland Europe as well, it is a little bit like that. But when you come to Australia, like 85% of tennis courts in this country are owned by local government.
Yeah.
So the access barrier in some respects is taken away. Yeah, there's always going to be price pointing issues as well that need to be considered. But if you look at regional Australia, like a lot of 20, 30 years ago, Dave, a lot of like local farms would have had a tennis court and people would have come around the tennis court and, had a cup of tea and played tennis.
Yeah,
and unfortunately, a lot of those tennis courts have evaporated. So I think there's a real opportunity in regional, say, New South Wales for the tennis centres to become that community hub again. Mm-hmm. Now, how do you open that up to people who've never hit a tennis racket? I think that's a job for Tennis Australia and Tennis New South Wales to get into the schools and get rackets in kids' hands, and they're doing a reasonable job in that area because that brings down the barrier. And ANZ sponsored the Hot Shots and invested significant money into junior development. So I think it's getting out into the Western Sydney Heartland, getting into regional with school development officers. And we know Aussie Rules have done that really well. I think tennis maybe can learn from that. But I think it is a perception management piece as well that we need to work on as a sport, that it is somewhat elitist. But as I said, there's a lot of farmer kids over the years. John Fitzgerald, the next Davis Cup player, he came from a small town in regional Australia and became a great player and represented his country.
Yeah, cool. Lots of great comments there, Richard. Thanks for that. And in terms of, I suppose, you personally in the system. So we've talked a lot about tennis, we've talked about SSMG, but what about you, Richard Price, in terms of where do you see yourself in the system and how would you like to contribute to it?
I guess twofold. One, I'm a leader of an organisation, so I have, I suppose, a social responsibility to, as I said earlier about the philanthropic side of SSMG and how can I, through my role, add more value in the access and inclusion partnering with local government or partnering with third-party entities to run access and inclusion programs. So I think there's a responsibility as CEO to do that.
Yeah.
Especially when you're managing assets on behalf of government. But even if in our commercial leases, I feel I'm pretty passionate that we need to do what we can in that space. And then I suppose the personal side of it, for me, sports, leisure, recreation have given me a lot. They've given me some great friendships. It's given me a career. So, what can I contribute back in? And I volunteer once a week doing something around tennis. I get more out of that than I give. But hopefully that's an example to maybe some friends or maybe even some of my staff to maybe they can contribute a little bit of their time as well to making a difference in the system. And then probably the third part is, again, I go back to this trust thing. If we can just work a little bit more collaboratively, and it's important to be competitive in an industry, in any industry, but if we can collaborate a bit more and build some more trust, be it sporting bodies or competitor companies, potentially we can make a greater difference because we're so fragmented. That's half the challenge when it comes to be it making a difference in the chronic condition space or the mental health space. So I guess my mantra to myself is to just be more open to collaboration and to coin your organization, just be more collective. Not always easy though when there's competing part. Not always easy, and I acknowledge that. When you have competing parties, and at the end of the day, you're in business. You got to pay bills, and you got to make sure you can pay the staff.
Yeah, and you brushed over it a little bit there, but I know, because I know you personally, that the coaching that you do, which you've just said is your favorite part of the week, is when you're coaching young people from Special Olympics Australia, people with intellectual disabilities and autism. And I think just anybody can influence the system. You don't have to be the CEO of an organization, like yourself. We all as leaders can try and do our little bit. And I'm sure just that hour that you do, you obviously I reckon get more satisfaction from that than probably most things you do. But that time with those young people, I think is make such a difference to people's lives?
David, it's an hour like it's nothing,
Mm.
in the scheme of the week. But like I'm really passionate about it. You see, it's not kids; it's all ages that
Mm.
come from Special Olympics, and
Mm.
like that's a big hour for them where they connect with each other. And what's been a real shame through COVID is we've had to put that on hold
Yeah.
because of social distancing, and that's been a real impact to those athletes. And obviously the parents and the caregivers, they have some challenges. Potentially looking after some autistic kids or kids with Downs. So it's a little bit of respite for them as well. But like it's a tiny piece of the puzzle. But I guess if everybody can do a little bit, hopefully we can move things forward.
Absolutely. And my last question, Richard, bit of fun, but do you think Djokovic should have been disqualified out of the US Open?
That's an easy question. That's probably the easiest question you've given me. He's number one in the world. He's a global role model to
Yeah.
kids.
Yeah.
Just out of zero tolerance, gone.
Yeah.
And I'm sure his sponsors will have something to say because they don't want to be associated with that sort of behavior. Now, I know there's a lot of conflict out there on social media at the moment. Did the crime was the crime reasonable to the punishment?
Yeah.
And absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Your thoughts?
Well, if Kyrgios had done it, I think he might have been banned for a few years. But yeah, I think the role models, so they have to act swiftly and be bold with things like that. So I think they made the right decision. Yeah.
And sorry, David, I'm a Rafa fan anyway, so I don't want Djokovic winning any more Grand Slams.
Well, he's catching up on him. Okay, well, listen, Richard, I just want to thank you for today, and just commend you for all the work that you do in the industry. I think I've known you 10 years in different formats and different relationships that we've had. It's great to get a leisure company on part of the system, to talk through some stuff. So is there anything that you wanted to add?
Yeah, thanks, Dave, for the opportunity to talk about, I suppose, collective and collaboration, and good on you for shining a light on how we can take a more systems approach, be more collaborative to get those bigger impacts. So fair play, well done.
No, thank you. Okay, I'll catch you soon, Richard.
Take care of yourself. All the best.
See ya. Bye.